Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. A long weekend with markets closed on Monday. We're going to be resuming coverage today, ranking the top 9 market cap movers year to date in the Bitcoin mining space, going through all of your favorites, including IREN, CleanSpark, TeraWulf, Mara, and Riot, along with many more, giving you a current market cap compared to where these companies were at the start of the year and a few of the top reasons why we think they're in the position they are now. Before we get into it, take a second, hit the like button. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these 9 miners and which you think will be on top of the list by year end. With that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, away we go. Tuesday afternoon, it was a long weekend here in North America. Gave us some time to catch up on miner news, a lot going on in the space. And to kick off the week here, we wanted to do something a little bit different, essentially taking a year-to-date look at the top 9 miner market caps, how those have changed, whether that's up or down over the last 9 months, and some of the reasons or the analysis, at least in our opinion, as to why. So very exciting episode. Before we get into it, we did want to address Bitcoin price. We've seen it trading anywhere from the 108s to the 112s, everything in the middle. We're sitting at 111 right now, but again, a little bit of a pause or holding period here while Bitcoin consolidates.
Yeah, and obviously my weekend was spent traveling back from Hong Kong. So back in the UK now for the next 4 days, and then packing my case again and off to New York to catch up with you, Bryce. But Bitcoin price today regaining from where it was at the weekend, really down to 108,000, and it's been a bit sort of volatile in early trading. Pre-market trading, it was doing quite well when I woke up this morning. Then it dipped back down to 108, 107,000, and then an hour after market open, we saw that pull back up to 111,000. So it's in that sort of role there. We're also seeing news that there was another big seller of Bitcoin this weekend and the last weekend, effectively selling close to, I think, 35,000 coins. So we've seen a couple of big whales deciding to convert some of their stack now into dollars. But bear in mind, I believe this whale's still got a lot of Bitcoin available there, but maybe just taking some off the table and it can change people's lives. I mean, we're happy to have a small amount of Bitcoin. 34,000 is a little bit extreme. You'd be in that sort of top 10 of holders of Bitcoin from a corporate perspective, from a Hodl 15 table. But yeah, the miners themselves. Early trading as the Bitcoin price went back up to 111,000, we saw a lot more in the green, but they pulled back now. IREN and Cipher, the two standout miners, to be honest with you, and Cipher's had so much coverage over the last 4 or 5 days from a number of people suggesting that there's better things to come from them in the very short term. September could be the month they start announcing a partner for some of their sites. We'll cover that a bit more there. But a lot more than miners now starting to sort of eke into the red. Core Scientific, that's down today, over 5-6% down today. CoreWeave share price is down again, lower than $100. In fact, I think it was $95 last time I looked at the share price. If the CoreWeave share price drops, Core Scientific share price dropped, because effectively that deal as it sits at the moment is based on the CoreWeave share price, not any fixed price, a floating price. So that's still got to be agreed by shareholders. But there we are for the markets today.
Yeah, we certainly are. I was going to say, I can't even open up X right now without seeing Open Door, Cipher, or IREN tweets. It's just insatiable retail demand for these companies. And speaking of which, we actually locked in Eric Jackson for the 15th of September. So we're going to have him back on talking about some of those top picks or hunter baggers, so to speak. So to kick things off, we're going to do a reveal style here today. Keep you guys on your toes. In 9th place, we've got CleanSpark. Now, this has been a very interesting saga. CleanSpark, one of the strongest operators in the Bitcoin mining space. You can see on their website here, 50 exahash, 16 joules per terahash, some of the best metrics in the space. But if you look at their market cap over the past 9 months, Anthony, really not necessarily what CleanSpark shareholders are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a Bitcoin mining perspective, you can't really fault them. 50 exahash achieved it as they said they would do. And bear in mind, over the last 3 or 4 years, not many miners have achieved their targets. They come out with targets, they don't achieve them. We can look at the two that did. IREN and CleanSpark certainly achieved their target, both getting to 50 exahash by the end of June. And CleanSpark actually narrowly got there about a week before the end of June, so they put the focus down there. In terms of efficiency, only IREN's got a more efficient fleet size. And bear in mind, CleanSpark are going to grow to 60 exahash, and therefore, when they put newer miners into their facilities, that fleet efficiency will come down even lower. So it'll certainly get closer to the 50, may even go below 15. We know IREN has stopped doing Bitcoin mining, so now it's open for CleanSpark to try and get that same fleet efficiency. If you have a low fleet efficiency, it means you're paying less power for your Bitcoin mining. If you had a criticism, you'd probably say the 33 sites. Managing 33 sites is a lot different from managing one or two sites. And what you can do with 33 sites, can you create some of those into HPC? I don't know.
Well, and that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up. And they actually just put out a new investor deck. This is their Sandersville facility. You can see the interior here. Very stark contrast to what we're seeing from some of the other miners that are getting into the HPC AI space. You can see the wall essentially made of a fiber product there or some sort of canvas. The racking itself, these are not server racks. These are traditional racks you'd find in a Home Depot or some sort of a store like that. Again, works great for Bitcoin mining, but the concern with CleanSpark, at least from an investor standpoint, as you can see in the year-to-date market cap valuation here, they haven't necessarily brought forward a strong HPC AI plan. Looking at their facilities, we're unsure if they have what is needed essentially for these type of facilities. You need large access to power, land, you need the team behind you that can execute. From what we're seeing, Anthony, the size of these HPC data centers looking more in the 100, 200 megawatt range.
Yeah, these sites that CleanSpot have are quite small, and as well as having, the facilities to fit the HPC GPUs in place, you also need water. You need to have great fiber as well. So there's a number of attributes, and we'll cover some of those as we go through some of the miners that have actually got those in place. The final thing I'll say is, I mean, to be honest with you, we're expecting this sort of pivot from all the miners. We've seen other miners who are sort of focused on being a pure play Bitcoin miner. CleanSpark were the last ones to effectively say they're now looking to maybe consider what the best return is on their power. Now, if you think back to March this year, me and Matthew had a little bit of a tete-a-tete on X, and he suggested I was bearish on CleanSpark. I couldn't be further from the truth from a shareholder. But I did respond to say that, maybe in your case, Matt, saying less is better. And to be honest with you, that was a bit tongue in cheek. I mean, you're now the CEO. I'd have expected more communication out there about what the strategy is. We're all scratching our heads as to know what's coming next. Hopefully, there's some sort of big announcement, and you are deciding to go down a similar route as some of your peer miners, because the share price just hasn't moved in the last sort of 7 or 8 months, and that's the challenge. I mean, we can't fault you on Bitcoin mining. You've got a great team behind you for that there. But as everyone else is pivoted towards HPC, the market likes HPC. Have you got the ability to deliver it? And when are you going to communicate it?
Well, and even on the Bitcoin expansion there, we haven't seen a concrete strategy as to where those 10 exahash are coming from. So as you say, we would love to hear from Matt in terms of that renewed strategy or vision. He's hinted at some HPC AI discussion, but nothing yet officially from the team. So with that being said, moving on to number 8 on the list, we've got Bitdeer. Now, this is an interesting one. They had a great Q4 in 2024. Share price was up in the 20s. You can see they're actually down about 23% year to date in terms of market cap. Now, the story for me with Bitdeer is obviously the Seal Miner platform. We just had Jeff LaBerge on the program. He talked about this inflection point, really hitting full steam on all 3 of these execution verticals. So maybe we'll start off there for Bitdeer.
Yeah, I mean, they have a number of revenue streams. They've got the self-mining there. That now 16.5 exahash as at June, and that's even increased. over 20 exahash as we speak now, in August. They've also got the hosting, and again, the hosting business has actually started to increase as well. And remember what Jeff said a few years ago when he came on the podcast very early. You look at these strategies and you work through them when it's more profitable to do some, and in some instances, they would reduce their hosting agreements when they come to the end if they felt the best way forward is to turn their attention to self-mining. 18 months ago, they started talking about this creation of a seal miner. We were very excited. They're about to produce Seal Miner A3, and we're only 18 months into the discussion. That comes out on the production line in September, and we'll start seeing that go out and be tested, etc., with a number of providers there. So they have these three excellent revenue streams, and then also, as you rightly say, they're looking to deliver with some of the biggest power available of all the miners, deliver a HPC strategy as well.
Yeah, when we start to look across their portfolio, again, you can see those multi-hundred megawatt sites, specifically in PJM. They've got the Clarington site, which Jeff talks very favorably about. My question for you on this one, Anthony, in terms of the Seal Miner, they've got some aggressive numbers there, 30% of market share in the neighborhood of about $6.4 billion. You look at that number compared to their market cap, obviously miles apart. The question for me is we've seen a lot of large miners now slowing down the rate of growth in terms of their fleet. In addition to that, replacing old miners, new miners replace multiple old miners because they're more efficient. The actual number of units being sold seems to be slowing. Do you think this represents potentially an issue with this vertical?
Well, in the near term, maybe. I mean, the North American miners now, even the likes of CleanSpark, looking to pivot towards high performance compute. However, that hasn't stopped the global hash rate from increasing, albeit on a slower scale. The last 7 day moving average was getting in for 980 exahash. That's a 7 day average. When it's getting close to that 1,000 exahash, that's a real milestone to achieve. It's got above 1,000 exahash many times, but doesn't tend to stay there very often. So we know around the world there are areas where people can attract very low rates of power. Now, the benefit for Bitdeer is if they don't sell all the machines, they just put them into their own facilities, and they've got a ton of facilities that are ready for Bitcoin mining across a number of continents. They've got Bhutan, they've got Norway, they've got the North America. So they've got the ability to sort of make these machines far cheaper than you can buy them from, say, a competitor like Bitmain or MicroBT, and start using them to deliver. And they're also providing like nation states like Bhutan the ability to mine there as well. So there may be some attractive power pricing as well. I think they're getting some really good power pricing in Norway, which is probably the only place in Europe at the moment that you can make profit, probably Bitcoin mining, and they're onto that one already. So I think, they're having that dual strategy. If they sell, they make a great margin. If they don't sell, they put the machines into their own facilities and they make a great margin as well. So I think it's a win-win for Bitdeer.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you talk about that global footprint. You look across this slide, you can see how diverse this portfolio is in terms of power. And again, take a look at the number of megawatts at these sites, you guys. They're in excess of hundreds of megawatts for these big facilities. So nice summary on Bitdeer. Hut is another interesting one. Number 7 on the list, they've made up tremendous ground. They're up nearly 70% in terms of market cap year to date. There's a number of big headlines. Obviously, Asher's been in the chair now for quite some time, really taking this company by the horns. They've got the partnership or spin out of ABTC with Eric Trump and some of the Trump affiliates, and this HPC AI push. So this slide was out of their most recent deck, talking about executing at scale. What I wanted to talk about here is not only the size of the pipeline that Hut 8 now has, but also the quality of the infrastructure. If you look at these images out of the Vega site, they put this facility up very quickly, very cost effectively. This is a tier 1 facility. Keep in mind, you need tier 3 in some data center situations. If you look at this compared to a Sandersville, for example, miles apart.
Yeah, absolutely miles apart. And we know a number of miners are building that sort of the hybrid between a Bitcoin mining facility and a HPC facility that will fit, GPUs. We do know some of the latest models coming off the production line in terms of GPUs, the B200s, B300s, and other, really, the latest machines. They're going to need facilities that are, higher than a tier one, probably closer to a tier three. And the cost to deliver a tier three compared to a Bitcoin mining site is a million miles away. Some of the miners, in CleanSpark can say we can deliver, Bitcoin mining sites at 400,000 per megawatt. Well, you wouldn't get change out of probably 7 or 8 million dollars per megawatt in terms of HPC. So it's not for the faint-hearted to go into that sort of strategy. You've got to have the money, the capital to support that. But I really like what's happened here. You're quite right. The sons of the president are, they're on the board at ABTC. And that's going to be, a great opportunity. Some of the conversations they'll be having with potential customers to deliver that strategy there, treasury management strategy, Bitcoin mining strategy. I expect that's going to open a lot of doors, and that's why you can see the share price of Hut has really, really done well. From a Bitcoin mining stance, they're still slightly under 10 exahash, but that will grow now as that Vega site opens and starts taking on more and more mining equipment.
Yeah, it certainly will. They talk about the fact that that can be retrofitted for direct-to-chip cooling as well, or liquid-to-chip cooling, which again, we've heard is the new standard for HPC AI data centers. They've also recently announced on the 26th of August, they've now opened up 4 of the sites in their pipeline for development, totaling 1,530 megawatts in the United States, the smallest of which is 50 megawatts, the largest of which a gigawatt. So I feel like Hut 8, as you say, they have their foot in the door thanks to some of those known associates, and they've really run with the ball now. You can see the American BTC or ABTC listing process continues to push forward. It should act as another big catalyst for the company.
Yeah, the Gryphon shareholders have already agreed to the merger, and that's likely to take place in the next week or so. I was at Hong Kong at the Bitcoin Asia conference, and Eric Trump mentioned that exact thing there. Watch out the next 2 weeks. They'll go live with the ABTC. He was very bullish in what they're trying to do there. And I just expect to hear some good things. I think it's another catalyst. We saw the catalyst when the president was nominated back in November last year, and what happened to the Bitcoin price then. I think we'll start seeing more catalysts now with especially the American Bitcoin mining company.
Yeah, excited to see how that one goes. And as you say, Gryphon passing that through some information on screen for you guys. The 6th one here, Cipher, we talked about them in the intro. We've had Tyler Page on the program. Looking forward to catching up with him in New York at the HC Wayne conference next week. They've had quite a remarkable year as well. 55% increase in market cap, a lot of which has came recently here. You can see currently sitting just north of $3.1 billion. But this one, again, based on social media, a lot of hype in the fact that they could be inking an HPC deal at any moment.
Yeah, and that's they've had so much exposure now on social media highlighting this fact. We've had Tyler on the podcast. He seems to think something's going to be announced before the end of the year, and our good friend Mike Alpha has been suggesting that now literally every day for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So he normally gets things right as well. So he's got his ear to the ground, what's happening in the space. So if you're not following what he does, give him a follow. In terms of mining, they've been growing their hash rate. So the hash rate now at the moment is over 20 exahash, 20.4 exahash, growing to 23.5 in Q3. So obviously that's with the Black Pearl site energizing there and putting new machines into there. Efficiency at the moment, 20.8, going down to 16.8 joules. That's going to give them, probably third place in terms of efficiency after IREN and CleanSpark, the only 2 that are under 17 at the moment. And the favourable thing for Cipher is that that blended power price there of 3.1 cents a kilowatt hour. That's one of the lowest rates, and you need low power, low efficiency for mining cheaper Bitcoin.
Yeah, you certainly do. And what's interesting, the Black Pearl site, obviously great for Bitcoin mining. They have phase two available potentially for this client. Again, look at the construction of this facility, you guys. The internal walls here, you can see the Bitcoin mining hot aisle. You can see an aerial view of the site, the scale, the dry coolers, just very impressive construction. That's what we've heard time and time again from the team at Cipher. What's interesting to me, though, is in the top right here, on the Black Pearl Phase 2 page, you can see they specifically quote Anthropic and Alphabet as having significant interest in investing in these regions. They could have picked quotes from any company they wanted, but they chose those two. And if you look at Mike Alfred's tweet, specifically says feels like Oracle, Meta, Google, or Microsoft as soon as this week. So interesting choice of quotes there. Interesting choice of posts by Mike Alfred. Also worth noting, 150 to 450 megawatts. And as you'll see, both Barbara Lake and Black Pearl fit that criteria.
Yeah, they do. And both of them sort of you can see. Well, obviously, Black Pearl site has got the power in place there. It's got the land available now. Should it have a customer coming after that space there? But Barbara Lake's 300 megawatts with significant additional power and acreage to cover some sort of a big deal with the co-location client.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, next up, we've got Wolfpack, TeraWulf. They're sitting just shy of $10 per share, giving them a market cap of 3.7 billion. That's up 63% year to date. Again, most of which has come just recently on the back of this Fluidstack Google announcement or news. We've got Patrick Fleury, the CFO, on tomorrow to give some more insight into that contract. But if you look at some of the terms here, from this most recent investor deck, you can see clearly why the market is now repricing or revaluing TeraWulf.
Yeah, this deal with Fluidstack is the second deal after the deal with Core 42. This one here is 200 plus megawatt critical load there. The value over 10 years, 3.7 billion, and like we've seen with some of these other deals, the potential for 10-year extension options, which could add a further 5 billion in revenue. Now, Google are going to take an 8% stake in Wulf, and obviously, so that everything aligns then. And they're going to backstop Fluidstack to the tune of about 1.8 billion. So effectively acting as a sort of like a guarantee. But having that sort of faith in TeraWulf to deliver, we know those conversations have been going on for a long time. I mean, I think Patrick suggested it was 5 months of round the table talks to get that deal to where it is today signed. And if any retail investors think these can happen over a weekend, then they're sadly mistaken. We've been obviously waiting for the likes of IREN, the likes of Cipher to do this, and Patrick, and he'll explain more tomorrow on the podcast about what actually takes part in these meetings to give those retail investors a better understanding.
Yeah, I'm looking really forward to that one. I love the titles of these slides. Strategic significance, not only for TeraWulf, but we saw the entire industry actually buoy up after that announcement or breathe life into the entire sector. The other slide here I pulled, purpose built. We saw with Denton facility and Core Scientific, many of these existing Bitcoin mining sites, they're not even worth retrofitting. They've actually had to bulldoze the entire site and put up a brand new data center. TeraWulf saying the exact same thing. This is a purpose-built facility for this client to their specifications. So again, for miners that are late to the game here, maybe they don't have a Corsicana or a Black Pearl or a Panther Creek in their arsenal, it's going to be difficult to really get the plans, the design, and this off the ground.
Yeah, and we were fortunate to go to Denton last year, and that site got bulldozed as well. Denton was the flagship Bitcoin mining site, 150 megawatts. Now it's their flagship HPC site with power, I think 260 megawatts of power. So they've increased the power. They've rebuilt those facilities now to meet the requirements for CoreWeave operating there. And as you say, a lot of these mining sites just aren't at the same level of construction required to deliver that type of strategy.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised. That's a good segue to Core Scientific here, who's fourth on the list. I was surprised they did have to bulldoze that. We were in those buildings, the hot aisles. They looked quite impressive from what I could see. So again, even that level of development or build, still not sufficient for AI HPC. Now, CoreWeave, Core Scientific, this was obviously the contract of the year last year. No wonder why Core Scientific went all the way from bankruptcy filing to one of the top performing companies of the year. However, if you look at 2025 year to date, their market cap is virtually unchanged, right in that 4.1, $4.2 billion range, which is interesting because they've now had a purchase option from CoreWeave, but essentially no impact on market cap.
No, and the run up to that deal being announced, we did see the Core Scientific share price rally to probably close to $19. So during the year, and if you want to put more of a timestamp on it, probably towards the end of June, it did get to those levels. But as the deal itself came out, there was rumors of a deal. Once the deal came out, it was then understood about that sort of how the deal was going to be structured, and the share price effectively has dropped ever since the 7th of July, the date of that announcement. Now, it has fortunately hovered around this $13, $14 range. Shareholders are going to have to decide whether they feel that's a good value for the company. Probably at the moment, maybe between 5 and 5.5 billion. Remember, on the day it was announced, that was a $9 billion deal. But as the share price of CoreWeave's come down, so does the value of the deal come down. Shareholders will get their chance to vote probably in the last quarter of 2025. And, it might be that shareholders want, maybe a little bit more from CoreWeave to come to the table. Because that deal, and we've got a slide to show, I mean, that deal is still the biggest deal out there. We've talked about TeraWulf and other companies that have, got deals there. This one's the big one. And, $10 billion deal over the next 12 years, 850 million annualized revenues, and the opportunity for additional 2 5-year options on top of that. So that's 22 years of really good revenues. And so I think shareholders maybe think this has been a bit of a giveaway, and they'll get the opportunity to vote when the time comes.
Yeah, I know I'm a shareholder, and that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. Is we don't need to sell the farm too cheap. If you look at their portfolio here, again, consistent with all the others, large scale sites, geographic diversification. I wanted to bring this slide in because we're going to talk about the next component here, which is staff and I guess know-how to actually build these buildings. They have over 300 employees, and they specifically note 115 plus technical data center or power employees and leadership team with extensive experience in data center infrastructure. So really no wonder you look at the history between these two companies, the experience they have at Core Scientific. No wonder they were one of the first to get these large deals. And we're going to talk about that theme of personnel or human capital in the next few slides as well here. So essentially, to close off Core Scientific, a bit of a waiting game. We just got that new information out of the S4. You and I put together a great podcast. You did a detailed timeline. Some of the new findings that we maybe weren't aware of and some of our concerns. We would encourage you guys to watch that one. But for now, we're going to have to wait and see on Core Scientific. Third on the list, Riot. We've had the privilege of going down to Corsicana. We're going to be going back in November. We've now finalized our November Texas tour round 2. You can see a very strong year, 45% increase in market cap, now coming in north of 5.1 billion. The slides I wanted to show for Riot, really a picture says 1,000 words. If you look at Corsicana or even Rockdale here, Anthony, the scale, the quality, the amount of infrastructure, the dry coolers, the security, the lakes, the water, the land portfolio, they're continuing to buy even more. Again, just absolutely miles apart from what you see with certain miners on the list.
Yeah, and actually, even looking at the Rockdale site, you can see very similar in terms of getting ready and prepared for the next stage now of delivering the HPC strategy. We were very, pleased to be invited to go through those facilities. And believe you me, when you go, and I've been to a number of facilities now, I've also been out to Sweden as well. And when you go through some of these facilities, you can see the quality in there, and there is quality throughout Corsicana. and everything is not condensed. It's very much spaced out. They could probably maybe put all their miners into maybe two of them, but they decided to have everything spaced out. And some of the technology in there, where the machines are linked. If there's a problem, the machine itself lights up so technicians can go in very quickly and find out where the faults are. I was very impressed with that, and I think I'll be equally impressed when I start seeing the HPC facilities start to get built at those two sites. I think this is the way forward for Riot, and they may have been slightly late coming to the market, but they're in a better position than many of the miners out there with power already available at both sites.
Yeah, and they've got the money to be able to back up these plans. I'll always remember when we were doing that tour, they were the immersion tanks at the time. And I said, Jason, why are these so spread out? Couldn't you stack these on top of each other? And he said, why? We've got tons of space around here. Why would we need to make it more complicated? So I'll always remember that's a great optionality. And a lot of data centers we're now hearing like that optionality as well. Some are multi-story, some like to be completely spread out, really depending on the client. And you can see with Riot, again, interesting, they have committed to a modest exahash increase up to 45 exahash. So they are still pursuing the Bitcoin mining. That's obviously great cash flow. But as you'll see on the next slide, the main focal point here is that aggressive pursuit of HPC AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't blame them for continuing to grow hash rate. HPC will come when a deal's agreed. That revenues might start in 2 to 3 years' time because they're going to have to build those facilities to the specification that's required. So why not make the most of the remainder of this period before the next halving and try and achieve as much Bitcoin? Remember that they're one of their hosted clients at Rockdale. They've now left, so Rhodium have left. That's given them more capacity there to deliver Bitcoin mining, so they could put extra mining machines in there and deliver that hash rate up to 45 exahash whilst they're progressing the build out of HPC, and then determining on that power return, they can decide what they want to do with the facilities that currently host Bitcoin mining. Come 3 years' time, when the next halving suggests it's going to be more challenging for Bitcoin mining companies to make any sensible profits. Whereas from a high performance compute strategy, those contracts are long and the margins are really good.
Yeah, they certainly are. I think it was Dan who said Bitcoin mining is not great on CapEx, but it is great for cash flow. And when I think of IREN compared to Riot or really any others in the space, they are very similar in terms of their portfolio that they have, the assets that they have, where they're located, the power price, the scale. I guess what I would say the key difference for me is really personnel. I don't think Riot, because they were later out of the gate, have the same level of expertise. However, they've tried to address that in recent months as well. With the hiring of Jonathan Gibbs, we talked about that on the program, strengthening that leadership team. To my former point about Core Scientific, who've got hundreds of these experts. It's great if you have power, it's great if you have land, but you need to know what to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't stress enough the benefit of having great management teams in place. And Riot are starting to build that. IREN were always thinking about this from years ago, but even before they started Bitcoin mining, what they wanted to deliver, and they've navigated it really, really well. They've proved to the market they can do this. So yeah, no, I think the Riot are doing well at the moment to get to what they need to do.
We heard from Kevin Deedy on our panel, flexibility of management teams is paramount. That's what Wall Street looks for. So it's important to see that these CEOs are picking up on what the market's telling them and they're adjusting their business plans accordingly. Now, number two on our countdown, Mara. This is interesting. They were number one as long as I've been in the space. They just recently got dethroned last week by IREN, obviously. We'll cover that next up. Mara still has a market cap near $6 billion. So phenomenal growth over the past few years. But in 2025, again, similar to maybe a Core Scientific or a CleanSpark, they seem to be kind of spinning their wheels as the market tries to digest this strategy.
Yeah, they've had some interesting strategies over the years. They were the first to come out with the asset light strategy, which was okay when the Bitcoin price and hash price was really good. You could grow really quickly and make use of that. when that strategy churns, when the hash price is lower, you want to start owning your facility, having control. And so now they've moved into that strategy there. They own most of their sites. They're going to probably in the next 2 years own 100% of their sites. And they were the ones with CleanSpark that said, we're not going to look at high performance compute. But I think even the most adamant of Bitcoin miners have all decided that this is the way forward. And Mara have been making some interesting purchases. And one of those was to sign an investment agreement with EDF, which is a European power company, for the subsidiary Exeon and expand Mara's global AI HPC capabilities. So they've got a 64% stake in that company now, with the ability to grow that to 75% by 2027. That gives them a foothold in the game there. And I would expect them to even grow further over these next 2 years in terms of they have sites and they have the ability in terms of capital. They are one of the largest miners in the space. So being one of the largest miners gives you more access to capital than a lot of the other peer miners. And I expect them to use that to grow further in HPC terms.
Yeah, it's a good point. A little more flexibility, I guess, with that type of a balance sheet. They've also advanced international growth strategy in Europe again with setting up a head office or a local office in France, regional headquarters, and leadership appointments in the European area. So their HPC strategy, as we've seen with some of these recent partnerships, whether it's with Tay or Pato, looking more so at load balancing, partnering with data centers on the back end to really balance out the power requirements and make the most of any residual or additional power when not needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll continue to get more and more updates from Mara as they grow this further out.
Top spot on the list, IREN, the Green Queen, they say on social media, market cap just shy of $8 billion. Anthony, you started covering them. I think you said Dan rang you up at half an exahash. My first video was at 3.6 exahash. They weren't even talking about GPUs at that point, but Dan had a vision. He said, we're going to monetize our megawatts with whatever is relevant at the time. Bitcoin mining was a great way to bootstrap the business. Again, the cash flow profile is phenomenal when you're starting to grow, especially if you're selling your HODL. I know we were critical of that last year. It appears that based on this chart, that is the strategy you wanted to employ. They're up 271% in terms of market cap in the last 9 months. Just a phenomenal showing in 2025.
Yeah, and actually, that's one thing we haven't mentioned during this discussion is the fact that a lot of these miners in the list here do have a HODL with a significant value. I mean, Mara got over 50,000 Bitcoin, which at today's price is valued at $5.5 billion, close to their market capitalization. In fact, we've shown charts where the Bitcoin HODL is actually higher than their market cap, which tells me that the market isn't giving any sort of premium for having Bitcoin on the balance sheet. IREN, along with TeraWulf, are two of the miners really out there that decided very early on they're going to use their Bitcoin to grow. And both of them have grown really well. And if you look at what's happened with TeraWulf, with those contracts in high performance compute, look at what IREN have done. They've grown the 50 exahash. At the same time, they've been telling the market that they can deliver a HPC strategy. They have an on-demand strategy at the Prince George site in Canada, and that's been going really well. It's at 28 million annualized revenue. But now with these latest GPUs they've just ordered, that's going to grow massively there as well. And the potential to get to 60,000 machines at that site there, that gives them about $250 million of annualized revenue. Add that to the fact that they're at the moment on $1 billion annualized Bitcoin mining revenue, and you've got some serious cash flow to deliver any strategy that they want to put into their sites at Childress and then at Sweetwater 1 and 2. So this has been the year for IREN. The market, we've said for over 12 months, the market likes high performance compute. Not such enamored with Bitcoin mining because of the volatility. Dan also agreed that on the podcast as well. It's a volatile space. And HPC does seem to be giving you a better return at the moment, hence why literally every miner on that list there is now fully focused on delivering that strategy.
Yeah, when I think about the next three IREN slides here, I think about that inflection point one on Bitdeer, those three different verticals. For me, the three verticals with IREN, as you just said, they've got a pathway for 60,000 GPUs just in British Columbia. That 250 million or $200 million run rate, that's based on the 10,900 they currently have. If they're able to get up to 60,000, by my math, essentially six times the number of GPUs, that's around 1.5 billion. Then the second bucket here, you've got Childress. We've talked about Horizon 1 coming online, that direct to chip liquid cooling. We've talked with Dan about do they even need a hyperscaler now if they're able to operate this number of GPUs themselves. Then the third inflection point with IREN is this Sweetwater hub. This is 2 gigawatts. They mentioned in their deck, Anthony, 600,000 GPUs, essentially 10 times Canada. That's around $15 billion. Again, very rough napkin math here on an annualized basis if they were to fill that facility up and operate themselves.
Yeah, and again though, the if I had one area of conflict with understanding this demand service here is the fact it costs so much for these machines. I mean, you're looking at maybe $45,000 to $50,000 per machine there. So when you put that into a calculator and work out how much you're spending, you're talking billions and billions of dollars. And the payback, Dan has said it's like 3-year payback. So at the moment they've got the H100s, and then now they're looking at the 200s, the B300s, the new Blackwell machines. There's all these latest models coming out. Nobody's got a clear view on how long they're going to be around for before you have to start replacing them for the upgraded machine, and what the value is when you've replaced them. So, if it takes 2 years to literally get your money back, the third year is where you start making profit. And bear in mind, that's just the machine cost in the first 2 years. You've obviously had to build the facility, you've had to employ staff, you've had to use power, albeit significantly less than Bitcoin mining. So this is going to be interesting. But the market loves it. So that's why the share price is doing what they're doing there. I'm just probably a bit more skeptical in the fact that it is serious investment, but remember. IREN have taken on Anthony now. He's going to deliver, that capital strategy to deliver the HPC services that they're going to be performing there. And he's already, in the first month he's been at the company, managed to navigate and get a couple of decent-sized contracts in the hundreds of millions at single-digit interest rate. So he's already earning his money straight away, and we'll see more and more of that. Hopefully, maybe get him on the podcast and he can give us more of an update of what's going on in terms of the market at the moment.
Yeah, between that financing and the preferred NVIDIA partner status, I think IREN definitely has a few X factors or wild cards. You bring up a very valid point on the payback. It does make you scratch your head. The only, I guess, solace I have is I do believe in HPC AI for the long term. I do believe first mover advantage is a huge benefit, and I do think IREN fits both of those categories. I know we did ask about upgrade down the road. These are leased GPUs, so potential to upgrade to Lepton or something like that afterwards. But again, I'm sure there'd be additional costs there that you then need to repay. So as we like to say, time will tell, but it's a valid concern.
And let's not forget, IREN did exactly the same in Bitcoin mining. They replaced the fleet when they saw the timing to do that, not when the machines were, still usable. They just went out there and decided to sell the old fleet, replace it with a new fleet. That efficiency with the power cost has paid back in space, or in terms of that growth, in terms of Bitcoin mined. And I'm expecting them to have a really good month for August as well when the results come out, probably towards the end of this week or early next week. And so, they've done that really well. I'm sure on the HPC side, when you've got that team in place, they'll equally do as well.
Yeah, I think so as well. And you can see based on the current Wall Street analyst price targets across the board, big increases there as well, ranging anywhere from $29 to $41. A lot of anticipation in that name. So there it is, you guys. Top 9 based on market cap year to date. A lot of movement on this table. I know you posted it on X. A tremendous uptake in people having interest in this topic. So we wanted to cover it in a podcast, and we're most curious by the end of the year, what do you think this list is going to look like? And do you think there's going to be significant change yet to come?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some more changes. I mean, a lot of these companies we've talked about today are potentially in that period now where they could be announcing a client. I mean, even though IREN's had this phenomenal run from 2 billion up to 8 billion, if they announce a client for Horizon 1 with the potential to expand into Sweetwater 1 and 2, that's going to be game over in terms of market cap and share price growth. Cipher, I think they're on the hinge of also announcing. Hut 8, do not write Hut 8 out of the equation whatsoever. We've talked about American Bitcoin mining. We haven't really spoke about Hut 8 in terms of the fact that they've also potentially are close to signing a deal as well. And as with all these companies, the deal's only ready when the deal is signed. So, if Patrick says, if it's taking 5-6 months for negotiations, some of these companies might be 4 to 5 months into negotiations already and getting very close to that position where they're, going to be able to sign an agreement. That's the impression we get. That was the impression we got from Dan on the last podcast, not the one we did at the weekend, but the previous podcast. He was very, sure that they'd have a name by the end of the year. And we asked the same again on this podcast, and he said, "Watch this space." So, I think there's going to be some more announcements, and that will drive those prices up for those companies that are able to utilize that power towards HPC.
Yeah, very interesting comment you make there. Because of the level of secrecy around these deals, many of these clients or customer conversations, they could be 90, 95, 99% of the way to the finish line. But because you don't have a deal until you have that signed agreement, none of that has been built into the share price in some situations. So that's exactly why we love this space. That's exactly why you can see those massive moves like we saw with IREN last week. And we anticipate many more of those to come throughout the remainder of 2025. So with that being said, you guys, there's the top 9. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know who you think will be on top of this by year end. And as always, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you back here tomorrow for a double header. Patrick Fleury, CFO of TeraWulf, focused on Fluidstack and Google, and a great update from Luxor Technologies, talking with their team about some of the underlying fundamentals. We'll see you there. Talk to you soon.